Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this ConnectALL micro webinar. My name is Scott Garrison. I am the Senior Vice President of Operations and Customer Success here. And today's webinar is the last of a series of webinars that we've conducted over the past month. If you happen to miss any of these webinars, you're more than welcome to visit our website, www.connectall.com, and view any of these at your leisure. As we go through today's webinar, if you have any questions, please put those in the Q&A section of Big Marker here, and we will answer those at the end. But this series of webinars that we have conducted have been in conjunction with our 2.11 release and all the new capabilities and functionality that has come with that release that we've given to our partners and our clients to help them manage their value streams. And today we're going to focus specifically on automations through the Teams lens. And as we discuss this, we're going to do it in the context of SAFe. And for those of you who aren't familiar with SAFe is Scaled Agile Framework. And the reason why we're going to interject SAFe into today's discussion is because SAFe heavily focuses on teams and the transformation of organizations into an agile methodology. And this focuses around collaboration, communication, and continuous improvement. And it scales. So what you see here on the screen is the basic framework of SAFe Essentials, but it will scale all the way up to SAFe Full, which is the enterprise and all the processes that come with it. And where we help are in the automation of these processes. And what we're going to talk about today specifically is going to focus around the agile release team, the users, et cetera, around that, specifically around sprint cycles, et cetera, and how we help people going through this transformation automate these processes. And we're going to talk about it from three basic building blocks. Those building blocks being focusing on teams, actual value stream automation patterns, either within a team or across teams, and the different automation types that you would deploy to automate these specific patterns. Now, if we take a look at teams first, and we focus once again on that section of SAFe that I highlighted earlier, when it comes to an actual agile release train or a sprint cycle, we're going to look at it from several phases: plan, build, test, and deploy. And in sprint, in the spirit of sprint methodology, rinse and repeat. These are common steps within a sprint that many of the stakeholders are part of, whether a section or all of those. At the top, you'll see some of the stakeholders that we'll talk about today, such as product managers, DevOps engineers, et cetera, and the tools that these stakeholders actually use. And this is where it becomes really important, because one of the core tenets of Agile is to be co-located. But even though many organizations are co-located, they're still working in disparate tools. So therefore, they might as well be geographically dispersed, because these disparate tools create artificial barriers and silos. And it's between these tools that we identify the patterns, the next step, or the next building block in automating your processes within SAFe. Now, here are a couple examples of these value stream automation patterns. We have many patterns that we've created and identified to help our clients, whether it's SAFe, whether it's ITIL, whether it's ITSM, whether it's something in DevSecOps. We've identified all those patterns that give our clients a starting point so they can start to figure out where they want to automate specific tools, specific stakeholders, et cetera. Some of the patterns as shown here, we'll talk about. Plan implementation. It's a very basic pattern. It can be equated to backlog management. This is a pattern that many product managers and product owners use. So as something comes in from a tool such as Salesforce, AHA, et cetera, that is a customer demand, a customer ask, this pattern is the disposition of that into a planning tool and an execution tool such as Jira, Rally, et cetera, where a development team can take it into their sprint backlog, release backlog, et cetera, and act upon it. Other patterns that we'll talk about today, the DevOps compliance triggers. This would be a pattern where you're looking to execute a build. But before you execute that build, before you actually trigger it, you want to understand what some of the criteria are and have they actually been met? Have all the defects been solved? Have all the scans been executed? For the scans that have been executed, have there been any vulnerabilities detected, et cetera? Another pattern, to give you an example, which is across the whole plan, build, test, deploy process, is the development and test alignment pattern, also known as defect unification. This pattern impacts all stakeholders, and it impacts every single tool in this chain, in this process, from the point that a request comes in all the way to the point that it has been completed. It's to understand, has the acceptance criteria been met? Have the test plans been run? Are there any outstanding defects, et cetera? So this gives a couple examples of the different patterns that you may encounter in your specific transformation. Now comes the last and final piece to the building blocks, and that is the automation types, which will help us implement these patterns and be able to start building the processes across my different stakeholders. Now, the thing to understand here that separates us from our competitors, we're talking about automation types, not integrations. An integration is a connection of two tools. Many of our competitors, that's what they're known for. They're integration tools, integration solutions, et cetera. But the secret sauce, if you will, really comes in the automation types themselves, everything that's going on underneath those integrations. And here you see 4 of our main automation types, and I will go through these from top to bottom, left to right. Starting with synchronization, which is probably one of the most common automation types. It is really focused on moving information between different tools and different stakeholders. It can be bidirectional, so it can be all the way down the chain across 1, 2, or 20 tools, all the way back up the chain. It can be unidirectional, but the key is it's to improve efficiencies, improve collaboration, and to create visibility and traceability. The next automation type is what we refer to as triggering. And I've already touched on this a little bit from the DevOps pattern that we've talked about, where I actually set up artificial gates that will look at specific criteria and determine if that criteria has been met or not in order to allow an event to happen, such as a build to be executed. Has all the code been scanned, and was it vulnerable free? Now, in conjunction with triggering, we have monitoring. And monitoring would be the output of those scans that would identify certain vulnerabilities. So it is the monitoring component that we implement that provides the governance and provides the compliance that you need within your process, that you can also evidence and provide, whether it's to a control board or to an auditing authority. It's also this monitoring that alerts if certain things have occurred. So if there would have been a vulnerability in the code that we checked in to actually get built, that could immediately alert whoever needs to be notified that we have a vulnerability that has been detected. And the last piece to this, or the last automation, is data collection. Now, data collection can span many different things. We can collect data from our synchronizations to understand how we're performing and to generate flow metrics. We can collect the data from the triggers that happen to understand whether or not our builds have passed or have failed. And anything that's been in the monitoring phases, such as those security scans, we can also collect all the data of those exception or abnormalities that can be logged in evidence for governance and compliance reasons. Now I'm going to show an example of all this within our ConnectALL platform. So what you actually see here is a live environment where we have implemented the Agile release train, all the tools and all the stakeholders across those different phases that I told you about. Now, the interesting thing from this view, this is the holistic view. This is everything within our Agile release train process area. Now, when I referred to earlier from being able to scale, imagine trying to manage this at an enterprise level. It would get extremely difficult if you were managing all these automations through specific plugins. And this is where that team component comes down to, because we can take these specific automation patterns and we can group them by team to let the right stakeholders and the right owners manage their portion of this. So for example, within this same environment, this is my product management team. Now, this is very small in scale, but this goes back to that plan pattern that I was talking about, and the product management team actually owning that pattern themselves. And as they mature, as the safe maturation occurs, that you get up to an enterprise level, they can build out additional patterns here within their own environment. The same goes for the DevOps team as well. So those patterns that I discussed and that I shared with you around triggering and being able to have certain criteria be met in order for a build to actually occur, this is indicative of that, where this pattern here in the middle of the screen, that is an actual logic flow gate that is monitoring and allowing certain builds to be kicked off once that criteria happens. Once again, this is within our entire agile release train processes, but we've been able to scale it back so the appropriate teams and stakeholders can own that. Now, this brings me to the end of my presentation, but I will leave with you again the three components, the three building blocks that are most important to building out these automated processes are, once again, teams, understanding the teams, understanding what tools they're using, the value stream automation patterns, so the pattern of the work that's flowing in between the teams and the tools, and then the automation types that I need to implement in order to make those patterns and those processes actually physically work. Now I'll stop here and thank you once again for attending to see if anybody has any questions. I do see that we do have one question. The question that is, and if you haven't posted a question yet, please do. You can put it in the Q&A section. But one of our audience has asked about whether or not we need to have synchronizations set up in order to achieve all the other automation types. Now, this is a very good question, and the short answer is no. Every one of those automation types that I shared with you are independent. They live on their own. You can use them in conjunction, but for example, the data collection pattern, we can collect data from any tool at any point in time based off of any triggers, et cetera, without actually setting up synchronizations. Many of our competitors, they sniff the synchronization, if you will, and actually pull the data off of that synchronization. Whereas we keep those things separate, which gives you more flexibility. And once again, it allows you to scale based off of your needs. If there's any other questions, I still have time to answer those. Please put those in the Q&A. I'll give a few more seconds here. Thank you, Dwayne Atkinson. I appreciate the kudos there. All right, so there's no more questions, but I will leave you with this. If you do have any, please don't hesitate. Go out to our website and feel free to enter a question in. You can also contact me directly at sgarrison@connectall.com. I'd be more than welcome to get you to the right place. If you care for a demonstration of our product or would like to understand more about how we help our clients with value stream management, I will definitely be more than happy to answer those questions myself or get you with the right individual. And with that, I thank you once again. Have a wonderful day.